At Let's Tell Their Story, we'd like to advise that some content may contain rape, domestic violence, sexual assault, child abuse, child abduction, and murder. Not all content is suitable for all audiences. Please be advised while listening. Thank you.
Yay! It worked!
Yay. Well, welcome to Let's Tell Their Story. I'm Casey,
I'm Quentin.
and I will start off with a true crime story, and then Quentin will follow up with some sort of legend rabbit hole that he's gone down this week, and
It's not.
every week he shocks me a little bit more.
This time it's not a legend. It's a little bit of a different thing. I'm not gonna say anything until I say it. Read mine.
Okay, but I do want to give a disclaimer about today's episode. It does involve the death of children, and we completely understand if that is not something that our listeners can listen to. However, children deaths do still need to get put out there, especially when there is uh, an unsolved factor to them. So let's get into today's story. It is about the Flora Fires. And this was Quentin's suggestion. And I don't think he realized how much we are going to be getting into things. So on November 21st, 2016, Galen Rose awoke to the screams of her daughters. 5-year-old Kiana Welch, 7-year-old Cariella McDonald. These names are really hard for me. 9-year-old Kiara Phillips, and 11-year-old Kiana Davis. These weren't just night terrors, screams of night terrors that the girls awoke screaming from. Their house was engulfed in flames. Galen did what any mother would do. She tried to save her daughters. But the smoke and flames were too thick. By the time Galen was able to exit the home, she had succumbed to severe burns. Now, according to a Reddit thread, Galen called the landlord first, and then the landlord called 911, and shortly after, Galen called 911. However, this is just from a Reddit thread, so take that with a grain of salt. Speculation, since it would take years for the 911 call to be public, and to this day, I was only able to find the transcript log for the 911 call. First on the scene were officers Josh Dissinger and Drew Yoder. There is dash cam footage of their response, and if you listen closely to the video, you can hear faint screams of the girls. Dissinger and Yoder entered the house in hopes to return with the 4 girls. But the smoke was so thick that Yoder began to pass out, and Dissinger wasn't far behind. So Dissinger prevailed, and he got Yoder out, as it was much too dangerous for the 2 of them to be in the house without proper equipment on. I did look into that a little bit. Apparently, if officers are on scene first, they do have the ability to go in and try and rescue. However, they don't have the equipment fire departments have. And if the officers go in pairs, if one of them starts to pass out or something like that, they are to get the officers out first, and then when the fire department comes in, they'll go and attempt to save the lives that are still inside the home. The Flora Fire Department showed up and they put the fire out. Now, at this time, I'm unsure if Galen was still at the home when the firefighters extinguished the fire or if she had already been taken to the hospital to be treated for her burns. As the fire was extinguished to the smoke and the smoke began to clear, there was a thick heaviness in the air as the girls were not saved. The autopsies showed the girls died of asphyxiation and CO2 or carbon monoxide poisoning. With investigation of the fire, it was presumed to have started with a faulty appliance. Allegedly, the refrigerator. So caution tape went around the Shard home at 103 East Columbia, which is at the corner of Columbia and Division Street in Flora, Indiana, part of Carroll County. Which Carroll County, the only reason I bring that up is because it does play a factor. Over the next few weeks, the small town of Flora would be littered in purple as it was the girls' favorite color. And the girls would be laid to rest within a week or so. A small town, I mean small. According to the 2010 census, the population was 2,036 people. Now, Quentin and we kind of understand that is a small town, but we know smaller towns.
I don't know what you're talking about.
By January,
I don't live in a small town at all.
you don't live in one. Well, the town I live in is what, 4 times that size? 3 times. Mine's a little over 6. I think there's 6,700 people in here. By January of 2017, there had been some discrepancies on what had actually started the fire. Fire investigators had now determined the fire's cause had not been a faulty appliance or bad wiring, as some people had suggested, but had now claimed the fire had been the result of arson, stating that there were multiple I lost my place. Accelerant points according to burn patterns. You would think this would put an investigation into overdrive. However, that wouldn't be the case. That February, only 8 miles away, the murders of Libby German and Abby Williams from Delphi took center stage in Carroll County. Now, I'll go into more details on the Delphi murders in the future because there's been updates and there has been an arrest in that. But the mention of them is necessary since it plays a big role in the Flora fires. Also, while the Delphi investigation, the fire was being reinvestigated, revealing that the burn patterns and the accelerating points were only one point of origin. And that it was definitely an arson that had been started. Now, Homeland Security was aware of the arson, but between them and the FBI, the Flora Fire was being set aside, and I had to figure out how to put set aside down it took me probably 20 minutes to figure the right wording because I almost put Homeland Security was aware of the arson, but between them and the FBI, the Flora Fire was put on the back burner. And I figured that was probably not the best way to put that.
I'm gonna back up a little bit. I'm gonna actually put out my candle.
Okay. All right.
I
Well, it was put aside due to the ever-growing publicity of the Delphi murders. Now, the people in the town of Flora weren't going to let the girls from Flora be forgotten. They wanted answers. Like, who was really being, who was, I should have rewrote this. What was really being done to find answers? Along with the Flora community, the NACP, the National Association for the Advancements of Colored People, began questioning the same questions. And along with them, they wanted to know why there was a six-figure reward for the Delphi murders and only a $5,000 reward for the Flora girls. Since with it being arson, that caused the fires, it technically fell into the category of homicide. Now, as these questions began circulating, even more bizarre events began to happen. Key figures in order to resign. In June of 2017, the lead fire investigator on the case, Dennis Randall, resigns. No reasoning, no explanation, just up and done. Then came Robert Ives, the Carroll County prosecutor, whom resigns. Explanation being given that he was close to retirement, but two of the biggest cases that have ever happened in Carroll County hadn't been solved, and he didn't feel like seeing them through. And lastly, just days before the 1-year mark of the Flora Fire, Flora Fire Chief Adam Randall resigns. And again, reasoning and explanation, none given. The town for years would go past the charred remains of the house and question so many unanswered questions. In 2018, a peer review by the Indiana State Fire Marshal investigators was reevaluating with evidence that had still remained. However, there was evidence that had been lost or just went missing. The peer review determined that the fire was most definitely arson and that there was only one point of origin. The house at 103 East Columbia Street, Flora, Indiana, stood until it was torn down in 2023. Some of the residents from Flora say that it may have been too soon. Now is just an empty lot. A stone bench now sits in downtown Flora. Yes, that small of a town has a downtown that honors the 6 girls of Carroll County that lost their lives way too soon. There's actually the person that donated it. Give me a second. The bench that sits in downtown is called the 6 Girls Stone Immaculate Bench. It memorializing Kiani Welch, Kyrell McDonald, Kiera Phillips, Kiana Davis, Abigail Williams, and Liberty German. And part of the message that is on, I don't know if it's on the bench itself or if it's just part of their Facebook page, but it says, quote, please to everyone in the community, make sure that this bench is used for pleasant conversation, a place of rest, and most of all, a place to talk about all the positive things that we can do in the future, and do not dwell on the past. And like I said earlier, there have been updates in the Delphi murders, yet the Flora Fire has stayed stagnant for years. Was the Flora Fire just the result of, and there hasn't been any answers because of bad investigation, or was there a possible cover-up? Because there's question of cover-up with either the police department or the fire department. And that is the information I could find on the Flora Fires. And if Galen Rose ever hears this, I hope I did those girls justice, because there's not many stories on these girls. Did that take a turn you weren't expecting?
A little bit. You cannot transcribe any of the 911 calls. That's what I was trying to do.
You can't. You can find the transcript, but there's so much stuff redacted from it, and I was only able to find it once. I did come across the actual 911 call, and I was able to listen to it, and I went to find it again. I couldn't find it. It just disappeared.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I actually did find the one.
I only have 2 of them.
I'm like,
I don't have a garbage can in here, right?
I do. I have a garbage can. See.
Hi, Miss Pearl. Hi, baby girl.
So
Hey, Miss Pearl.
mine will
Hey, Miss Pearl.
have Dr. Price and the Detective Mulroon.
Those names sound familiar.
Okay. So my story begins on a cold autumn night in a quiet town of Blackwood. As a seemingly ordinary evening turned dark as a local physician was found dead under mysterious circumstances.
Circumstances? Yeah, it sounded like you said circumcision.
And pretty much everybody's asking, was it a crime of passion, a calculated scheme, or something more sinister?
Ooh.
So I have a thing with Detective Morone, the lead investigator on the case, and then Dr. Price, who's a criminal psychologist expertise to help with the case. So Detective Morone goes, it starts with the detail. Like the scene was so staged that there was an absence of forced entry. Even clues pointed to something that, like, pretty much the scene was pretty much when you think of somebody got murdered, and you're like, what should you do? And like it's particularly like planned each step. Like there was no chance. Like the killer didn't want to leave any clues about themselves, so The detective said they were basically chasing shadows. And Detective Marone said the scene was elegant and terrifying at the same time. That you can walk through what made the that murder seem almost perfect. So
When did this happen?
I will tell you at the end. So, and going back to Detective Marone, the victim study was like left undisturbed, like so their study was left undisturbed except for one single cryptic note. There was no signs of struggle, no fingerprints, no, and that did not belong to the physician. It just seemed like he was killed by magic or something just mishappened. So, I'm going to go into what Dr. Prince was thinking and why he thinks it's also like pretty much a perfect crime from the psychology perspective. There was no like even like a perfect one would always have a flaw, like balance with like somebody would have overconfidence in themselves or too much caution, or they will make a mistake. Is your mic off?
No.
Oh, you said stop and I didn't hear it. That's why.
I was talking to a dog.
I know that's. But so the criminal never leaves almost no trace, and like he was using every loophole that was in the system possible to make this seem like nothing actually happened there. So it's just a dead body there. And then there was a thing where so Dr. Prince was thinking that the killer probably just wanted to leave a message for who was trying to solve it, so they didn't know what was going on with it. And then in the following weeks, like rumors and theories that were going around, like people were trying to solve it under a microscope, pretty much under key eye.
Basically, they were doing more than the Flora Fires were doing.
Yes. But here's the most messed up part. None of that's true.
You just gave me a creepypasta, didn't you?
Actually, yes.
I had a feeling you were giving me a creepypasta, but I wasn't sure.
Like, it is such a particular way that this one did it. It's like it sounds so real and everything like that. It was like, okay. Yeah, there's no Dr. Leonard Prince or Detective Detective Sarah Marone.
Oh, that's why you weren't giving me when it. Yeah, as soon as you said you tell me at the end when it happened. I had a funny feeling it was a creepypasta. I did fail to give. I'm learning that sometimes it's just be easier for me to do it this way. But my sources for the Flora Fire were a YouTuber called, his name is Tony Bruschi. His YouTube channel is Hidden Killers True Crime. Obviously Reddit and WTHR.com were my three main sources for the Flora Fire.
Yeah, I was gonna say mine's creepypasta. I don't have to say anything else.
No.
Though I will say it is kind of interesting, even going into like I'm on the Indi um Indiana's um
Indiana.
yeah, state police thing about the thing. Like, and there's
Hmm.
like the reward is still the same amount.
Yeah, yeah. It's almost 10 years later and the reward hasn't changed.
Yep.
Now, my question is, why was there a 6-figure for 2 white girls that were 8 miles down the road, and these little girls happen to be African American, and it's 10 years later and theirs hasn't been changed,
Yeah.
and they were younger? Because the girls down in Delphi, they're blonde hair, blue eyed.
You know what's really funny is I just
Which means which Quentin, which means if you go missing, you're worth more than your brothers.
I'm definitely gonna bring that up the next time I see them. I'm still seeing if I can just even find anything on. That's not that one.
I will roll this on out while you're looking.
Yeah.
So thank you for watching or listening to Let's Tell This Story. This has been a shorter episode than we've done in the past and we'll do in the future. Hit that subscribe button if you're watching on YouTube. Give us a 5-star if you're a 5-star on your podcast platforms. Leave a comment on whatever. It really does help our show get up there, and we would love to be on one of the top. We'd love to be up at least in the top 50.
Yeah.
And we do our best to give you as detailed as possible, but sometimes sources and stuff can't always be 100% verified.
Yeah, like.
So until next week,
When
guys,
you collect evidence,
stay safe.
Stay curious. Wait.
Yep. Okay, you can hit or you can hit stop. I gotta let Pearl outside.